Now, what's your name again?
When?
Gwen?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that information.
Farmers tend, the sucrose level tends to diminish over time after all that harvesting. So after about 4 years, they will plow it under and put soybeans in or something to refurbish the soil, and then come back a couple of years later and replant the sugar. But yeah, it'll take over. It's like bamboo.
Right, I said I no longer need a privacy fence in my backyard. I just plant sugar cane.
Right,
It will definitely do the trick.
That's true, that's true.
This is native to Louisiana?
No, it's a tropical plant, and it was brought here in the early 1700s. Some Jesuits priests brought it, and they were making sugar just for their own purposes. And then in 1795, a fellow named Etienne de Bourret was able to crystallize sugar under our conditions here. They had been doing it in the Caribbean for years, but he was able to do it under our conditions here in Louisiana. And once he did that, sugar really took off as a crop. So they're enjoying the exhibit. Kathe.
Hi.
I'm Kathe Gilbert. Hello,
Hi.
Mr. Harold.
Okay, this is our the person that we came to visit, Miss Kathe Hambrick Jackson.
Yes, it's Hambrick now.
Okay, okay.
Hambrick?
It's Hambrick, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, what's your new name? Because I haven't been
My old name is back my new name again.
Okay, good.
So you are
I am the exhibit's curator here at the West Baton Rouge Museum.
Okay.
I am the founder of the River Road African American Museum in Donaldsonville.
I've been there.
And so I've been here in Port Allen since July. And so I'm currently curating an exhibit called Creoles du Monde, which is an exhibit about the Creole culture around the world. That exhibit opens February 1st and goes to May 5th. And I'm in the process also of curating the juke joint, which you will see part of today.
Okay. All right, now, just for information's sake, Creole and Cajun.
Well, Cajun is actually, Cajun people were Acadians French people who migrated to Louisiana after being exiled from Nova Scotia in Canada. And it was because of a religious dispute between the British and the French. The Cajun people were Catholic, the British were Protestant. They ended up being exiled. Some ended up going back to France, and another group of them ended up coming to Louisiana in the mid-1700s, and they found themselves going to the rural part of South Louisiana, not staying in New Orleans, and they became farmers and people that lived off of the land, typically that we know as the Atchafalaya Basin, or within the wetlands or swamps of South Louisiana. Creoles are people who are descended from African French Spanish, African French Spanish, or indigenous people around the world. There are multiple definitions of Creole, however, depending on who you ask and where you're living. There is also a description of Creole here in Louisiana and some other places around the world where it says firstborn in the new territory. So say, for instance, your mother and father were French. They moved here to the new Louisiana territory. Their firstborn children in this new Louisiana territory would be considered, or were considered, Creole. And so that's how you get some people who are considered white Creoles. In my generation of time, it's more the definition that most of us are familiar with, where it is Native American and African, Native American Spanish, Native American and French, or any combination thereof.
Okay.
The question that I'm also looking at with this exhibit is, are you considered to be Creole if you are African and German, if you are African and let's just say we know that Jewish is not a race, it is a religion, but how do you identify Creole people around the world who are not French or Spanish?
I see.
or French or Spanish.
I understand.
So it's been quite a challenge, but it's exciting because depending on who you ask and where you are when you ask, you will get a different definition of Creole.
Well, you sound like you're on top of it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to. Okay, this is Harold X. Evans of New Orleans, and he's going to take us through a brief dissertation about one of the founders.
About Norbert Rillieux, Norbert Rillieux, depending on whether you're an American or a Creole or a French person. But Norbert Rillieux is the man who revolutionized the sugar-making process with his multiple effect evaporation machinery, which was able to refine sugar cane to be what we know sugar to be today, the fine, white, granulated product, as opposed to the hard rock crystals that you had to beat up to get the sugar out of. So because of Norbert's invention, sugarcane growing became a bigger deal than it was even before, because now it became easier to process the sugar. And as I mentioned, it saved lives because the process was so dangerous before that it was a hazardous occupation with the mules and the men. That was a big deal. So much for Norbert Rillieux and the great work he did. Of course, he was forced to leave America because of bad political environment at the time. But Norbert Rillieux, native-born Louisianian from New Orleans, and there it is.
Thank you. This, of course, is, I guess, the apparatus that was used, and I took some pictures before, but I don't know how to explain this stuff, but it just looks kind of complicated.
Well, it was more or less a centrifuge. So it would spin the juice, and it would actually take all of the molasses out of the raw sugar, and it would spin it and spin it and spin it until all of the juice and molasses was separated, and then you'd have more of a crystallized form of sugar. And so it was called the triple pan evaporator.
Okay, today, Kathe, when you buy raw sugar in a store, that's more expensive than regular sugar, or the difference is?
Actually, raw sugar is supposed to have more nutritive value because it still has molasses in it. Natural, it's still the natural form of the sugar.
Oh, okay.
It has not been through any chemical processes, raw sugar.
Okay.
Brown sugar is just white sugar that they have put molasses back into. So it has been processed. They're just adding molasses back to give it a brown effect, which many people think is healthier, but it's actually the raw sugar that's more healthy.
And you were telling me this is how many millions of dollars a year they make off this stuff?
Oh my goodness. I think I posted a picture. We were at the Alma plantation last week at their sugar mill, and in their warehouse, I posted on Facebook, it was literally a mountain of sugar, of raw sugar, and it was $5 million worth of sugar just in that warehouse on that one day. And so that was the Alma Plantation sugar mill, which is about 20 minutes from here, going towards Lakeland, or most people know New Roads, Louisiana, which is now Alma Plantation and Alma Sugar Mill is the largest sugar mill in the northern hemisphere. So I understand there is a sugar mill now in Morocco, which would be more northern than here. But the one in Lakeland near New Roads is the most northernmost sugar mill, producing millions of dollars worth of sugar daily.
So you have a lot of people employed there as workers, or the machinery does most of the
Oh my goodness, the engineers who we met at the Alma sugar mill last week were from the Dominican Republic.
Okay.
And so they come here as seasonal workers. They come and work during our sugarcane season in the mills from September to the end of December. We try to get the sugarcane out of the fields before the first frost, which is usually or typically before January. That's our harvest season, or what we call grinding season. And so these workers come here to run the machinery in the sugar mill. Many of them have learned that trade from their fathers, grandfathers, uncles. It's a skill that has been passed down. Then they go back to their native homes. Either, I think I met a couple of the guys who were from Colombia, from the Dominican Republic, other places around the world where there is sugar. They work in their native homeland, and then they come here during our grinding season.
Okay. And that lady, the young lady at the desk informed me that this is not a native plant of Louisiana. It comes from other places, and it's...
Well, sugarcane was not naturally grown here in Louisiana. The original plant was brought here from India. Well, first brought into the Caribbean, also taken into Brazil, and then made its way here to Louisiana. The first crop that was grown here as a cash crop was indigo. Okay, so indigo grew here naturally in the wild, but it did not become a cash crop until that blue, rich color of blue that we know as the blue that's in Levi Strauss dungarees.
Yeah.
That blue that you see in original Levi Strauss blue jeans was a popular, very, very popular color in the 1700s. The rest of the world had not seen that color outside of Africa. And so when the French went to Africa and they saw they were processing this dye, they decided to bring the indigo seeds here, and it also was cultivated in the Caribbean and the West Indies. And that blue, it's amazing that a color, an industry could be built around the popularity of a vibrant, bold, rich blue color that we know as indigo. And we do have some indigo fabric, and I have some indigo dye that you'll see in cabin 1 that we just added to our tour here.
Oh, great, great.
But I mean, millions of dollars. What happened with the indigo cultivation was the planters realized that the processing and inhaling the fumes from processing the indigo caused a high mortality rate. So not only did Native Americans were dying from it when they first tried to use Native Americans to process indigo, but the enslaved people were dying over time. Then sugar became popular as a cash crop. Everybody wanted sugar on their table, but everybody couldn't afford to have sugar on. You couldn't afford to have sugar on your table. As a matter of fact, if you come and see here, this is a sugar chest.
Okay.
So sugar, this is a sugar box. So you can see that that cone of sugar that's right there.
Right.
Sugar would be measured and weighed before it was put on the table, and you had to keep it in a locked box. I hate to make this comparison, but it's almost a comparison to cocaine.
Oh, okay.
I mean, by the ounce.
Okay.
I mean, sugar was
expensive.
It was that valuable. It was a product that the rich wanted to have on their table. And I mean, it was $5 a teaspoon is what you can think of it in terms of. $5 a teaspoon was the value of sugar.
Bear brought sugar with his process to the common man.
Yes.
Because it could be produced in such quantities that it became cheaper.
Yes, yes. So you could imagine how much it would cost to make a cake. To have a cake or a pastry or something that had sugar, sugar in it.
Right.
So that's why it basically fueled the economy around the world. But it wasn't only the sugar that was valuable, because from the sugar, you also got rum.
Okay.
So you got rum. So the rest of the world had never tasted rum before. And it was the enslaved people in the West Indies, and I wonder sometimes if that was an accident. You don't know whether it was an accident or here they are cutting this sugar cane. The cane is sitting around. You have the juice that is a byproduct that you're boiling to actually make into the sugar and then make into the molasses. Did it start to ferment somewhere in a bottle or in a barrel? And then they realized, the Africans knew how to make palm wine. They knew fermentation, the science of fermentation to create alcohol. But yes, it was enslaved people who actually developed or invented rum. Rum became a very, very valuable commodity on the world market also.
Well,
It is still today.
thank you for that information. Me being just a layperson, I always equate sugar with, of course, that dreaded disease, diabetes. So we paid a lot of money for this stuff to kill us, or is that what we...
Well,
And I know you're not a medical doctor, but...
But I've been doing some research on that, and it's not just the sugar, it's carbohydrates that turn into sugar.
Okay.
Excess of anything that your body cannot metabolize naturally. If you don't get enough exercise, you're not getting a balanced diet, you're eating too much sugar, you're eating too many carbohydrates, then that creates an unhealthy body.
Okay.
So we definitely can say that sugar contributes to it, but we must look at lifestyles that make us healthy overall, and all of those things that are unhealthy in our diets.
Okay.
The sugar was also valuable because they learned that they could put it in those horrible medications that people had to take and making them more palatable. So that was another big positive effect of sugar. I wouldn't give Norbert a bad name, but lately people seem to be trying to give sugar a bad name, but it is not sugar in itself.
So these are weighing mechanisms that...
These are all from the laboratory of the Sinclair plantation, which was also a big sugar refinery here in West Baton Rouge Parish. So these are from the laboratory, where they would test the glucose content and the water content. It's really amazing because what the mill does is they can extract every bit of juice, because you want the juice, you have to get that cane juice is what you get sugar from.
Right.
They extract every bit of cane juice, from the mud. They squeeze and process that mud, and now they put chemicals in it even to make the juice fall out of the mud. And so they have these mud ponds and water ponds at the sugar mill where they have extracted every bit of cane juice out of the mud, the leaves, and you end up with a byproduct that's called bagasse, which is kind of like a straw. I don't know if we have any bagasse around here, but it almost looks like chopped up straw, which is what's left of the fibers from the sugar cane once everything has been extracted from us.
That's incredible.
Used as fuel.
Yes, and bagasse is used as fuel.
Okay. That's incredible. Thank
So
you.
they don't waste anything that comes from the sugar cane. They don't waste anything. So we can go.
Hello, Carol Evans.
Nice to meet you.
My pleasure.
This is Angelique Bergeron. She's the director here, and this is Gilbert Francis.
How are you?
Francisco.
Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Carol is a living history character.
Was
PBS Pinchback.
All right.
And also, and he said, I came to a museum either here in this area or somewhere as Nora Really. And I said, it was only here. There is no other one in this area.
There were a lot of school kids coming through that day. And I was talking to them about real use, sugar cane, the multiple effect, the evaporation process and all of that. And it's good to come here because it brings back memories because I'm losing so many of mine.
Oh my goodness, that sounds like a wonderful program.
It was, and
So you recall being in this building.
I remember, like I said, it was either in this building or one just like it. It was probably here, because when I
Over
saw
here, I don't think there's another building like this around. It's been added onto a bunch and kind
with all of this,
of, right, so originally it was just this front part that was the vault of the whole courthouse.
Okay.
And then they added this gallery, and then that gallery, and then out this way.
this is amazing. I was telling the other lady that I planted a little piece of sugar cane in my yard recently, just to see what would happen, and it astounded me.
It's sprouted.
Oh yeah, it took over.
Okay.
As long as you have one of those little joints.
Yeah.
Right.
It'll come in from there.
And it's amazing, so I decided I wouldn't have to bother about buying any more privacy fences. I just planted sugar cane. I didn't know it grew so tall.
Well, it's bad. It's in the bamboo.
That's why we have
family.
this mural here to show the kids when they come
Right.
the height that it can get. Because, if you don't live around here and get to walk beside the cane, you don't see how tall it can actually
Right,
be.
it amazed me. I had to chop it down because it was covering my security lighting in the back. It was amazing.
Yes.
That is a fantastic mural.
In this book here.
Okay.
This is an exhibit that was being developed just before I was hired this past summer. But we wanted to recognize the fact that here in West Baton Rouge Parish, that the people who came here and did the work on the plantations who became enslaved, that they came here with skills. They came here with skills. They weren't just brought here to do manual labor. They came here with skills. They brought their traditions with them, even though in many ways they were not allowed to play drums and practice many of their customs. They brought the skills with them. So
It was the same thing with the rice farmers in the Carolinas.
yes. So ironworking, they knew ironworking for centuries, so they became blacksmiths. Not only are there blacksmiths, but there are tinsmiths, silversmiths, coppersmiths. For every type of metal, when you're talking about ironworking, there was a smith. And the Africans that came to Louisiana, of course, we can see it evident in the French quarters, in the ironwork of the French quarters, and in the Carolinas, and in the Caribbean. But these were the people who, once again, brought their skills here. They brought their medicinal skills here. So they knew herbs, they knew holistic medicine. So that means that they knew the science of plants. They were botanists and biologists and astrologists, astronomists.
Africans made America.
Yes, Africans made the world.
Right.
So anyway, so we start off talking about where those people came from the Senegambia area of West Africa. They ended up here in Louisiana and in West Baton Rouge, and then of course they contributed to the sugar production, the sugar industry.
Now, you told me that the plantation place that's located here is the largest producer of sugar as we know it
Okay,
today.
The plantation where we visited last week was called Alma Plantation.
Alma, okay.
And it has the largest sugar mill in the Western Hemisphere. So they get sugar cane from throughout south of Louisiana from various sugarcane farmers. So they grow sugar cane, yes, at Alma, but you can see these trucks going into sugarcane fields all through St. Mary's Parish, Iberville Parish, West Baton Rouge Parish, Point Coupee parishes. There's about 7 parishes that are sugar producing parishes now. So Alma gets its sugar cane from, I think they said 5 of those parishes here in South Louisiana.
My great-grandmother had a sister who used to work in the sugarcane fields. Her name was Aunt Hetty. And unfortunately, one day she had an accident while chopping sugarcane, and she actually severed her thumb. And it was, when I understand, you hear old people talk, you had to sit in the corner and listen, of course, but they were talking about how they took her into the house and doctored it or did whatever they did to it, and she had to go back and complete the day's work.
Right, and some of the slave inventories, we see a reference to people being what they called badly implined or implined. And what that actually means is that they had an injury or a cut, missing fingers, missing maybe an arm or limb from either the sugar mill or actually cutting cane in the fields with those big machetes.
That's
So
incredible.
it's in the inventory, slave inventories at the museum in Donaldsonville. We actually can see that next to the name of people who also we find in those inventories if a person had an illness, if they had consumption, which was tuberculosis, if they were blind, if they were sickly, if they had scurvy, rickets, all of those diseases of the time, it's listed in the slave inventory. If a person had a skill, if they were a blacksmith, if they were a seamstress, if they were a cook, that's also listed in the inventory. And you know why that is, right?
Can you tell me?
Well, the reason is if you had a skill, your value, if you were going to be sold, would be a higher value. Say, for instance, a cook at the age of 45 we've seen those women sold for as much as $2,000. If you were a blacksmith at the age of about 40, you would be considered very skilled. You could be sold for about $2,500. If you had an illness, of course, then your value would be less.
I see.
Yes, so that's the reason you see that in the inventories. This is this exhibit is called Lives Interlinked, and this is the Allendale Plantation, which actually burned during the Civil War, but it's named after Henry Watkin Allen, who you see here, who was governor of Louisiana from January of 1864 to June of 1865. He was governor during the Civil War. He left West Baton Rouge and became an exile to Mexico because many of the southern planters, once the Union won the war, thought they were going to be taken as prisoners of war and prosecuted. So some of them left and went to Europe. In the case of Henry Watkin Allen, he fled to Mexico. The man that you see here, that his life is interlinked to, the man to the left here, his name is Valerie Trahan. Valerie Trahan was his butler, who was taken into the war with Henry Allen. And the question came about because when you see what has been written, it says that Trahan went with him. There's this big discussion about whether there were black Confederate soldiers. We know that there were black men who went with their owners into the Civil War as their valets and their servants. So the question becomes, did he go or was he taken?
Okay. All right.
And we will never know unless you actually have those diaries of individuals. So we don't know whether he went willingly or if he was taken, but there was a relationship between these two men. When the governor, when Allen came back, he actually worked in the State House in Shreveport as the butler. As what I say to people and what I've come to understand as a historian studying this history and living in plantation country is that it's a process that you have to go through to heal yourself. You have to accept it as the truth of what happened. You have to realize that you can't understand the joy of our people until we understand the suffering that they went through. And that makes us understand how much stronger we should be, but how strong they were to endure it, move themselves past it, and thank God through religion because religion, most of our people are very, very religious. They relied on God to get them through that pain and suffering. So how could we ever forget it? How could we not ever want to talk about it?
Yeah, yeah,
Are you filming now?
yeah. Yeah, we need it.
Oh, really?
It's huge. It's going to be a part of my Creole du Monde exhibit. It was probably here, I'm sure, because they do a lot of very diverse programming.
Okay. Right.
Yes. So I'm excited about. I hope the museum buys that painting from him, so it's a permanent part of the collection.
His things are stunning.
Yes.
That's the impression I got from seeing.
So I have from him. I have Alexander Dumas. Of course, who wrote The Count of Monte Cristo and The Three Musketeers, who was of Haitian and African descent.
He has a large one of Toussaint that I saw.
I don't have Toussaint. Toussaint is probably, oh gosh,
It
it's
was
probably
great.
10 feet by 8 feet. It's in Atlanta.
Okay.
But I have Jean-Baptiste Dussable, the founder of Chicago.
Right, Chicago.
We have him, Alexander Dumas. I have A.P. Toureau. John James Audubon
Okay.
was, his mother was Black Haitian,
All right.
and his father was a French naval officer. And then what is the other one? Dumas, Dussable. Yes, those are. I think those are the five. Oh, and a cane cutter, a man cutting sugar cane.
Okay. I was trying to think of the name of the man who succeeded Toussaint.
Oh, it wasn't Hippolyte, huh?
No.
No, Hippolyte was before him.
Or after.
Oh, you'll have to come.
Right.
But
Okay, we're about to take a tour of the sugarcane processing apparatus here at the museum. And I'm going to turn it over to Kathe. All right.
This handcrafted model of a sugar mill shows the state-of-the-art in sugar making technology as it was in 1904. This model was first displayed at the Louisiana Purchase Exposition to commemorate the centennial of the Louisiana Purchase. Let's take a closer look. At harvest time, the sugar cane was cut by hand, loaded into dummy trains, and brought to the mill. The cane was placed on feeder tables to be crushed through 3 sets of milk to extract the juice. The leftover cane, called bagasse, went to the boilers to be burned to provide energy to run the mill. The juice was pumped to lining tanks to settle out particles, then to juice heaters, clarifiers, and skimmer tanks for further cleaning. The mud skimmed from the liquid was filtered to extract more juice, then taken to the fields as a soil amendment. The clean juice went to triple effect evaporators, which boiled off excess water, leaving a dark, thick syrup. The liquid is now crystallized in vacuum pans. The liquid now has tiny sugar crystals in it and is called mesquite. Centrifugals spin the liquid to separate the crystals from the syrup. The crystals are raw sugar and the syrup is blackstrap molasses.
every relationship between every, let's say, white man or European man and every African woman was a situation of rape. Just like you can't, we do know that there were fewer relationships between black men and white women. But we have to realize we're human beings. People naturally fell in love.
I was telling my 11-year-old grandson recently about the relationship between Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. But there were many.
There were many. In Louisiana, when we heard about Sally Heming and Thomas Jefferson, for us in Louisiana, that was no big deal.
Right.
You know, if you people live together for a long enough period of time, there's going to
It's going to happen.
There's going to be relationships, natural relationships.
Yeah.
Now, I can tell you, yes, I have read some horrific things about some planters. But what I tell children, there are good and bad people in this world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can be.
There are
all
good
over.
and bad people in this world. I had a little boy one time, a little Caucasian boy one time. He said, "But I thought they were supposed to be Christians." And it's like, well, how could someone hold someone else as property and buy and sell a human being? And I told him, I said, you know, there are people who profess to be Christians today who don't do the right thing.
Right, right.
You know, there are
right.
people who will sell heroin to their own mother.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, that's
yeah.
it's that almighty dollar.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so people will do horrific things to other people to make money. And it really was because of greed, I say. You know,
Yeah.
children ask, well, how did that happen? Why did that happen? The only thing I can say is really it's because of greed, because it was about money.
Yeah.
It was about money.
I think
The
so.
dollar.
Yeah.
All about the dollar.
So anyway, so Trahan, Allen, Governor Allen actually ended up leaving this trunk to Valerie Trahan, who was his butler. And the Trahan family still lives here in West Baton Rouge today.
Oh, okay.
This trunk is on loan to us from Preserve, Louisiana. It was given to them by the Trahan family. But you can see it's a leather trunk that was given to Valerie.
So now you said preserve or reserve Louisiana?
It's Preserve, Louisiana.
Okay.
See right here? It's on loan to the West Baton Rouge Museum
Okay.
from Preserve.
But now there's a place called Reserve too.
Yes, there's Reserve.
Okay,
Yes,
okay,
yes,
all right.
Reserve.
All right.
But this is actually like a foundation.
Oh,
A
okay.
preservation foundation.
Okay.
But the Trahan family still lives here in West Baton Rouge, and the museum commissioned Ronald Trahan to sculpt this what you see here, this head. We also have the bust, the maquette, or the clay model. Ronald is a metal sculptor here in West Baton Rouge Parish who studied under the famous Frank Hayden, who was a professor at Southern University and a sculptor, renowned sculptor here in Louisiana. And Ronald studied under him, and so we just received this just a couple of months from Ronald.
That is very interesting.
It's very interesting, very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So here you have a modern or a contemporary sculpture of Trahan in contrast to the maquette or the model of who was Louisiana's last Confederate governor,
Okay.
who also is the man that the town of Port Allen is named after.
Okay.
And this is Henry Watkins Allen. It's very interesting that Angela Gregory, who sculpted this, positioned him sitting. He lost his leg in the war, but you see him, he's sitting and he's contemplating. You know, they lost the war. So you can kind of see the expression on his face. That he's not,
Horror.
yes.
Yeah, like what happened?
But anyway, you know, so different artists, you know, create pieces with their interpretations based upon the individuals that they study. It's interesting here. It's interesting here at the brain
Okay.
of his grandfather, what he did there.
You know, I was married in Port Allen.
Were you? So your wife was right there?
No, it was in New Orleans.
So what made y'all come up here?
Because Reverend Northern, who performed the ceremony, his wife was a friend or
Okay, now this is the stuff that you're talking about with Levi jeans?
Yes.
Okay,
So see, this is indigo dye,
okay.
but when it was produced in bricks.
Uh-huh.
It was cut, it was put out in almost like clay. It becomes a paste.
Uh-huh.
And then it was cut into bricks and then sold by the ounce or by the pound in those bricks. And then it was
Okay.
stored in barrels. But you can see this blue. They had never seen blue like this. It's amazing. You had nothing else. You know, you had reds and yellows and other types of colors in Europe, but they had never seen this blue before.
Uh-huh.
So this became a very, very popular cash crop. And it's actually from a seed, produced from seeds. But here is, look. This is from the last grinding at Sinclair Plantation, and Sinclair Refinery closed in 2005. But you can look at that color of that sugar, see?
Oh, okay,
You don't really, this is raw sugar.
okay.
And then, of course, we talk to young people. I'm not going to hold you long in here because I don't want to be in here too long. But, of course, black-eyed peas come from Africa.
yeah.
You know, the many of the plants that ended up here in America became a part of soul food, Creole food, or even Cajun food came from Africa.
I found out that,
There was no okra grown in the Americas prior to the Africans coming here.
I
And
also
this is,
found out that watermelons come from Africa.
yes, watermelon, yams,
Uh-huh.
yes, black-eyed peas. Many products come, many of the food products or plants came from Africa. Yeah, so anyway, we're gonna move through here pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
And we do dyeing programs with children. So, you know, you can take onion skins and make yellow and brown dye. Lichen, different kinds of lichen will produce green colors.
Okay.
So we do dyeing exercises or programs with children to show them that the Native Americans also showed us this.
Okay.
Okay.
You know, how to use plant products, berries, seeds, leaves, fungi to dye fabric. And then we're still working on this exhibit. Still working on this. You can see the collar there. That's a replica of a collar, like the collar that Wilson Chin wore. We're getting ready to add Wilson Chin, the man that you see a lot now, who was a runaway from Louisiana, had a collar on like that, that actually had 3 prongs that had bells on it. These are the names of the people who were enslaved. We were talking about Allendale Plantation.
Uh-huh.
These are names of people from Allendale Plantation and Westover Plantation.
Okay.
And so there's 1, 2, 3. There's 3 panels of names. As many as 220 people enslaved by Governor Allen.
Good old Governor Allen.
Yeah, so we're adding to, we're getting ready to, I have a pair of shackles that would have been the size for a child. It's going to be added here.
And here we have a $150 reward for,
A runaway in West
For
Baton
runaway.
Rouge Parish,
Okay.
yes.
okay.
And you see the leg irons there.
Now, the guy that was second lieutenant governor of Louisiana, can't think of his name.
You're talking about Dunn? Or
Yeah.
O.J. Dunn was lieutenant governor. We had 2 black lieutenant governors in Louisiana.
Uh-huh.
We had C.C. Antoine, and then we had O.J. Dunn. Couple of weeks ago, and so this opens up. This becomes a stage, and then we do concerts here. We're also going to teach children. Look at this. You might need to use your flash.
Yeah.
We're going to do a workshop to teach children how to make cigar box guitars.
Oh, okay.
So see, this is a cigar box. We're going to Harpo.
What's his name?
Slim Harpo.
Okay.
And so even the Rolling Stones sampled his music, used his music. He wrote the song "Baby Scratch My Back." Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
that's probably his most famous song. I'm Gonna Miss You, King B. Yeah.
Okay.